Here we are again. I guess what's cool about this is that now the discussion questions can be on TikTok. So y'all on TikTok, what's up? You're gonna get the discussion questions. Now, I have in my app all of the Bible study videos if you ever want to go back and actually watch the Bible studies, watch them with your friends. And then there's the discussion questions in there, and it actually has a prompt, like the ability where you could type in the answers. So if you want to save them, store them somewhere. Um, that the questions are there for you. I also try to put them in the YouTube, but there's so much content that it's like to stay on top of. So you'll see that like the questions might not be um, in the videos yet, but they will catch up, right? It might be like a week behind, and then I might go back and then add all the questions from the week before. But it is important for us to hang out and chew on these things that we study, and it's your participation, right? So it's like I've been talking, it's like, okay, what did we learn? What are we going to do with this now? So I'm excited to hear y'all's answers, right? Like when I ask these questions, like y'all get in there and or just soak it up, right? For you guys to be able to participate. You're fresh off the word, maybe some things for you to think about today. You know, I love engagement, but I also love sowing seeds and just truth and transformation. And so if it's just you listening and hearing something that is helpful for you, I'm just, like I said, glad that y'all are now able to be a part of these questions, because they're powerful and they can help. They can help you apply it into your life. So, okay, when the women are heading to Jesus's tomb, actually, let me make sure this is right. Okay, good. Y'all don't know how many times I've like recorded a whole video. You know how long I go, right? You know, if you've been here for a minute or if you've just been here today, I go very long. And I've had the mic cut out, so like die multiple times or the video not saved. So that's not today though. So the women are going to anoint his body, right? This is kind of a cool question. Have you ever approached a situation, with expectations only to find that God had already made a way? Praise the Lord. What a cool way to phrase that question, right? Not saying, have you had expectations and then you showed up and you were disappointed, right? Because that's usually the way that we look at it is we show up, we have an expectation, and then we're disappointed until we look back, hindsight's 2020, and we're like, wow, God, you did make a way. You're so good. But where we have an expectation and we find out that he has already made a way. So it's like we think we're gonna have to do more, right? And I think I mentioned this the other day in Deuteronomy where he says, like, you will drink from wells you didn't dig, and you will live in houses you didn't build, right? Um, and so how sometimes he will call us to dig the well, right? To be the Abraham and be like, I know you're in a desert, dig the well. But then sometimes you inherit the well. It's like someone else did it, right? But how you go into a situation with an expectation, I think this is especially for the control freaks out there. You think and I think this is a great way to break off religion. You think you have to do something a certain way for the Lord to give you grace, for the Lord to love you, for the Lord to make it happen. And it's like, if he's called you, he's making it happen. He's going before you. He is the way. This is why we follow him. Quit trying to find another way. He is the way. Follow him and you will get there. Right. And so I've said this before, and I'm going to make a graphic for it because I think about like a fork in the road. And one way leads to Boston and one way leads to Nashville, let's say. You can choose if you're going to go to Boston or go to Nashville, right? So you could choose the destination, but you do not get to choose which way is Boston or Nashville, right? I cannot say I'm going to go to the right and end up at Boston. No, I'm going to go to the right and end up at Nashville. So the two choices are I either have the choice of what's right in front of me, I'm going to go left or right. And if I go right, I go to Nashville. If I go left, I go to Boston, but I can choose left or right. But if I choose right, and I'm headed towards Nashville, I don't get to make Boston be the destination, right? I don't get to change the outcome. So I can choose. Or like I said, I can choose the destination. I want to go to Boston, and I might be thinking I go right, and the Lord's like, nope, go left. And you're like, but that doesn't make sense. Or, oh, I don't want to go that way. That way's mountainous, and I want to go by the beach, and I want to do a different, and I don't want to have to wait a year. I want it to happen this month. And he's like, do you want Boston or not? Because like you said, you wanted that thing, and I'm showing you how to get it. And it might require some other things along the way that you didn't expect, but like that's how we're going to get there. but also just that, like, when you let him go before you make a way, you don't even have to worry about the GPS or the map or anything. You just follow him. You wake up and say, where are we going? And he's walking, and all you do is just follow him where he's walking and he's going. That's why it's so great to just have your eyes fixed on him, not caring so much, and understand, like, I am a strategist. I am a senior level strategist for mogul media companies, right? I have run massive campaigns that most of you have probably seen, right? I am a strategist. It was very hard for me in my own life to not try to strategize because I have fun strategizing. Like, it's cool it's like a puzzle. It's like chess. You try to figure stuff out. And so I'm trying to play a chess game, and God's like, this is my chessboard, right? It's like, now I will show you how to win, but like, quit you thinking you get, like, there's so many things out of your control. There's so many things, and you just don't even know what's good for you. You might, with your limited information, think you're making a move that's good, and it's actually not. So just be patient. And there might be a move that you make that seems like a loss. It seems like you have to swallow your pride. It seems humiliating. It seems like you're not getting the recognition you deserve. It seems like you have to be humble for a season more than you thought. Like, you think you deserve a certain title and certain income, and you got to stay in that lowly position for a little bit longer. But then all of a sudden the president comes and says, I see you. I see you work harder than anybody else. You didn't complain when you weren't recognized. And because of that, and then they jump you up 3 levels, right? We just don't know. That's the kind of stuff that we can't control. But anyway, how he has already made a way. And I've also said this too, when it's hard, the Garden of Gethsemane, when sometimes we want there to be more than one way and there's only one way. And rather than hallelujah, praising the Lord that there's a way at all, right? Because the idea of trouble, tribulation, remember, you feel hemmed in, you feel like there's no escape. So praise the Lord that there is an escape, there is a way out, but sometimes there's only one. And that's the way you have to take. And usually it's the only way out is through, right? You don't get to run from your fears. We think, how do I overcome my fears? And God's like, well, you got to face them. And you're like, well, there's got to be another way. Maybe running from them, maybe avoiding them. Maybe that'll work. It's like, no, that ain't going to work. There's only one way out, and it's through. And so that can be hard too, is like, we want there to be more than one way out. And that's where we try to take it into our own hands. God's like, here's the way out. And you're like, like at first it's, please let there be a way. Please let there be a way. And he's like, oh, there's a way. And then it's like, but you got to do this. And you think, oh, that's a little bit more difficult than I thought, or that's going to stretch me more than I feel comfortable. Maybe there's another way. And then we try to take it into our own hands and make another way, rather than just praise the Lord that there's a way at all. Right? But so anyway, he's already made a way. And how does this encourage you to trust him? To trust him that sometimes you're going to step on a scene. I mean, all the time you're stepping on a scene that God's already prepared. God's prepared you. God's prepared the soil. God's prepared the place. Even if, again, like, let's say that situation ends up in your rejection and you think it wasn't successful because you didn't get accepted in that moment, rather than realizing the rejection is the necessary next step, right? The rejection is what's going to cause you to do the next thing. I think about when they said that the stone the builders rejected would become the cornerstone, that Israel had to reject Jesus to get him on the cross, to get everything done the way that it is, right? So the rejection was actually used. It was necessary. So we always think that things have to go our way, or we have to end up on top in a certain moment for it to be winning or for it to be successful, and not realizing, like, what if the best thing that ever happened was you showed up at that situation and it all fell apart, but it caused the other people to, wake up to their own shortcomings, or it causes them to, leave that company. Like, again, maybe you thought, oh, I want this door to open, and it just completely gets sabotaged in front of you. But it's like, that's the best thing that could ever happen, because it's going to lead you to a different door, a better door, or it's going to put in perspective the true leader that you are, where everyone else that they thought were leaders are now crumbling and falling and failing and tripping and stumbling. And everyone's like, whoa, those people aren't leaders. And now they see that you are. So letting it unfold and not being so tied to it. And again, having so much of your own image and your own predetermined outcomes that you think are going to make you look good, right? Just be good and be confident in who you are, know what's true, and know that things will work out, right? Okay, so when the angel told the woman, he has risen, he is not here. How does Jesus's resurrection impact your personal faith? Right? So everything I talked about with understanding God's plan, there was always resurrection going to come. That death was never the end, that it was just the judgment on the flesh, right? That there is hope, right? That everyone is asleep and he is resurrected. There is resurrection. He is the resurrection in life that came in time. We're post Jesus. We know this. How does this make you braver and more courageous for the things to come? Rather than thinking, oh, wow, like all this scary stuff's going to happen. How can us actually being post Jesus, post resurrection make us the most equipped and the most prepared to handle whatever comes because we have no fear in death, because we know of resurrection, right? How is resurrection changing your personal faith? And even, like I said, realizing that there's areas that he brings to life, right? That he rises you up. The places that you try to bury, you've dug a hole so deep, right? And he pulls you from the pit, right? He rises you up. He puts a pulse back in your heart where it's become calloused and cold, and he lights a fire in there again, right? So his resurrection, and like I said, just the hope, the understanding of the temporariness of this life, right? To live as Christ, to die as gain, how we carry our cross. Our life is not just about, I'll say this a million times, it's not just about binging Netflix and going to football games on Sunday and, you know what I mean, birthday parties or whatever. Just one more, God, just one more football game, just one more birthday party, please. Like, why? What are you talking about? That we literally love others and we love God, and that we yield, and that we're constantly dying to ourself and our selfishness, and we are open to relationships. But anyway, you tell me, what's up? How has this given you hope? How has this changed everything with your understanding of death? Right? How has it made you maybe not so angry, not so impatient? Right? Maybe you treat others different. Maybe you don't get so offended by every little thing that happens on a daily basis because you know that there's so much more to life. Okay, so then the angel instructed to go tell the disciples, told the women to go tell the disciples. It's interesting that this question says, you know, how faithful are you in sharing the good news? But I'm thinking that he also mentioned it again later where he tells the disciples, preach the gospel, right? The good news. First of all, say good news. Have you accepted that it's good news, right? Like that this is not just doctrine for you to understand some historical like information. It's good news that we've been saved, that there is life, that death is not the end, right? This is all good news. Are you not on fire about it? Are you not lit up? And if not, then go be in his presence. Because like I said, when we're in his presence and he's the light that shines on us, we become light, and we're the light of the world, and we shine that light in other places, and we shine that light in dark rooms, and we're the light at the end of the tunnel for people, bringing them Jesus, showing it. It's like a trailblazer. It's like I found my way out, or God drew me out, honestly. And you stay there and you stand on that rock so that everybody else sees that it's possible, right? So be that beacon so that they can see it's possible. I said this the other day too about like, it's like if everyone's in quicksand and you get pulled out of the quicksand and put on a rock, don't jump back into the quicksand just because that's where everybody else is, right? You stand on the rock and let them have hope. And I mentioned the testing of the rat, where there were two rats swimming in water, and they took one of the rats out, put him on the ground, like let him breathe, and then put him back in the water. And he survived, right? The other one drowned, but he survived because he had hope. He believed, he held on to the fact that there is a way out. I know there's a way out because I experienced it. And I don't know how long time is passing, like how indefinite this is, but I'm not going to give up, right? So that hope lets us hold on to, I'm not going to give up one more day, one more moment, right? Just 1 second at a time. I'm going to hold on. I'm going to endure. So that it is good news. And when you know it's good news and it's changed your life, right? You want others to not have to sit in their torment and their inner battle and their self-sabotage and all that stuff that we used to feel, right? You don't want others to feel that, and you want them to know they're loved, right? And so if you're not sharing the good news, what's holding you back, right? Because it says not to be ashamed of the gospel, but what's holding you back? And I would say one thing that I had to learn has been how to share it. Because it was one thing to be doctrine obsessed and think like, oh, I have the answers and come at people with information, versus really realizing, whoa, they are brokenhearted. They do not know a way out. They do not understand that they are loved, right? It all doesn't make sense to them. They don't understand that there's hope, right? That there's life after this, that Jesus is good and that he saved us and that it was all necessary, right? Because it seems very complicated. This is why I love too. It says the simplicity of the cross. Just don't take away the power of the cross. God died for us. All right, but what's holding you back? Okay, so then the disciples, we talked about this, they didn't believe, right? They didn't believe when the women said that they saw him. They also didn't believe when the men walking on the street saw him. So think about when you've doubted what God was doing in your life. Like, even if you've seen it, even if you've heard it, even if God literally said, I'm going to do this in your life and it's starting to happen, it's almost like we push a good thing away. Like we're scared to receive the good thing. And it's like happening. And then you're almost like, I don't even know. It's like too good to be true. Like, I don't know if it's that we feel undeserving, unworthy. We don't know if we can manage it. All those things. I don't know why we can't process it. But even in this, when God's doing something he said he would do and it's happening and they just don't believe. I think because they're so heartbroken too. Maybe when you're heartbroken, you just can't even picture. But so, when have you doubted? And even right now, if you're doubting, and let's switch it, right? Because like I said, what is doubt? Doubt comes in when you don't know what the truth is. And you start to think there could be other ways. You start to take control. You start to, I don't know why you would lose trust, right? Because trust and faith are the same thing, right? Confide in Latin, confidence. Like what you're putting your confidence in, why it would waver from the Lord. And then if it wavers from the Lord, you're actually helpless because what are you going to put your trust in? You can't put it in yourself. You can't put it in other people. But right? So if you're doubting something even right now, how can this story be sobering where you realize that, like, first of all, it's okay to believe for the big things. Honestly, the God-sized things are the things that require belief. If it's something that is small enough that you can do it on your own, you wouldn't need any faith. You wouldn't need to believe. So you almost should recognize there should be a cue that God's doing something when it's too big, when it's way bigger than you would ever do on your own, way bigger than you can comprehend, and it requires trust. That's where the muscle starts to get built. See, that's what we don't like is we want to trust for things that low key we could also salvage if they start to fall apart. We do not like the place of being where it's true trust because we can't salvage it. Like it is 100% him, but that's where belief comes in. And remember what he said about belief. So just say, I believe, I believe, I believe, I believe, I believe. And do you? What do you believe? Do you believe what God says? Do you believe in God? Do you believe in Jesus? He says, believe. Like I said, do you believe in truth or lies? What do you believe? I would say I believe that God is good. Right? He rebuked the disciples for their unbelief and their hardness of heart. So that's all it's saying too. So check yourself. Where is it that you don't believe? You got to let the Lord into that area. When I studied the verse that says the lust of the eyes, the lust of the flesh, and the pride of life. And it was talking about the lust of the flesh and the word flesh, sarkos, which again, our flesh is what's going to die. But sarkos, it literally means like, it said like the untouched part of you, like the part of you that you've not let God touch. So there can be almost like chambers that you haven't let him into yet. And so that's what unbelief shows, that there's like a chamber, a place that you've stayed like hard in your heart. And that's why I said it has to be 100%. You can't say I'm 99% for the Lord and 1% not, because that 1% of callous, of hardness is preventing you from fully yielding, is preventing you from bearing fruit, right? Of being fully overwhelmed, consumed, right? He's an all-consuming fire, all consuming. He must consume every area. We do not get to reserve certain areas. So all this does is reveal an area where there's hardness of heart. And so quit holding on to that spot. Quit justifying why that one area gets to stay hard, right? And let him soften it. Let him have it, yield, right? There might be some prayer. There might be some crying. There might be some just spending time in his presence and talking about it, saying, I'm just scared, Lord, right? But at least let him in, address it, right? So that's kind of the question. Are there areas of your life where unbelief is keeping you from experiencing the fullness of God's promises? Because that's what you don't understand. You are keeping yourself. right? God was leading the Israelites to the promised land, and they kept themselves in the wilderness for an entire generation because they didn't receive, they didn't listen. So it's like your lack of reception, right? There's a partnership here. There's a participation that there might be an area and you don't even realize it. You just are entitled to your unbelief in that area and you don't even realize you're not experiencing his fullness. But you know them by their fruit. The evidence is that your life doesn't feel full. There are areas where you are still anxious and still scared and still in fear and still in pride and still care what people think and still, need security from the world, whatever it is. And so you're actually missing out the fullness and you don't know. It's the third seed. The third seed doesn't know he's not the fourth seed. But the fourth seed is known because it's 30, 60, 100-fold. That's how you'll know. You'll have more abundance than the third seed has. But the third seed has a scarcity mindset and starts to hold on to the little that it has and is afraid to lose it and locks itself up. But when you fully yield and break open, because that's what bearing means. Bearing fruit is to birth it. And if you look at the word birth in Hebrew, it means to break. Isn't that crazy? That when we are giving birth to a child, we are actually breaking. But right, to bear, you bear a child, it is born. You bear fruit, it is born. You are birthing it. Oh my gosh, all the buzz. It breaks you. You have to break open, right? This is the whole breakthrough. You reach a breaking point and we avoid the breaking point. As soon as we get to the breaking point, we're like, no, I must be in the wrong direction. And it's like, no, the breaking point is the breakthrough. You got to get to the other side, right? It's like a caterpillar going in its chrysalis. And right when it's time to push out its wings, it's like, whoa, this thing is breaking. I don't know. I want to stay in this chrysalis forever. I just want to be trapped here. And it's like, no, you've got to break. The breaking, right? The alabaster jar, break and pour out. Okay. So we talked about sharing the gospel. So the signs, right, of believers. And how do you see these powers at work in your life, right? Or just God, right? The light that you're shining, like I said, being in his presence, being so filled with light that you see it, you hear it, people speak of it, right? You're bearing witness to the Lord, the fruit that you're bearing, right? It says we bear fruit for his glory, but that we have the power to heal, that we can cast out demons, right? It's the authority. He says, I've given you the keys to the kingdom, right? He's reclaimed them, given us the keys to the kingdom. We have authority again. We had forfeited. But in the beginning, right, God said, one, be fruitful and multiply. So we know that our design is to be fruitful and multiply. He also said to subdue the earth and have dominion over it. We had authority and we forfeited it and Jesus got it back. So how do you reclaim that authority? Authority in Christ, authority in God, right? Authority. I saw a cool post too that was talking about it's not striving. When something is yours, right? It's different than achievement. Achievement is again, you're trying to change outcomes. You're trying to make things happen versus realizing they're already happening and letting them happen and having authority over them. This is the flip side. This is the whole thing upside down, which is so cool too. Oh, and I don't know if I said, if you're wondering this, and these are discussion questions from Mark chapter 16, the Bible study we just did. Okay, so we know that Jesus is seated in heaven, right? Like he is seated in authority and we are in him, right? So how does knowing that Jesus reigns over all things give you confidence in your daily struggles? And I would say, honestly, for some of us, we know God's big. We almost think sometimes our struggles are too small, right? Like, is he really concerned with those things? But he is, because he's concerned with those things, because you have to understand the seed is what becomes the tree, right? And the tree is what becomes the orchard. He knows that the smallest seed, that's why he says a mustard seed of faith is the biggest tree in the garden. Like he knows the smallest little thing in your life could lead to bigger destruction, right? It's like this one little thought, this one little thing takes you down another road and it turns into an established planted tree that now is a lot harder to uproot. And then when that grows and it becomes a habit of your life, right, it just becomes harder and harder to uproot. So it's like, give him the seed, right? Give him the conception of the issue, of the problem. And don't think that things are too small, because he knows that they will grow in time. Whatever you water, right, It will grow. And so that it's like, it's not too small. And then I've said this before, well, I don't know why people would want a small God, because in moments when your problems are bigger than you and they seem so big and you think, what could help me? This is when we're grateful that we have a God that is the biggest, that is first and foremost, right? That is highest in order, highest in rank. He's above everything so that nothing is bigger than him. And that can give us peace, right? Why would you want a small God? Why would you want a crystal or a star sign or a little figurine that you can knock over, right? He says this, God says this himself. He's like, why? Why would you want these small gods? They cannot help you. And you're so afraid and intimidated of a big God rather than being grateful. I'm your father. I'm the authority. Like, I love you. I don't use my power against you. I use my power for you. But be grateful that I think about a kid. It's like, thank you, daddy, that you can protect me and that you can, move the knives off of the table and that you can pick me up and help me get in my chair and that you can, catch the baseball that's headed towards my face or whatever. Like, it's like, thank you that you're big, Dad. Like the things I can't even see, the things like I'm dependent, I can't protect myself from, and you are sovereign, like you are bigger. So anyway, right? How does knowing that he's bigger than your problems help you, even right now? Just think about it. I'm trying to think if there's like an emoji, like for something big and for something small. Maybe it's like the world emoji. If you have big things on your heart that you think, oh my gosh, this is just so big. It's so much bigger than me. And that we praise that God is a big, big God. And then what would be a good small emoji? Like I think about the ant, but like he's kind of gross. But you could do the ant emoji if you have problems that you think are small. And I love what he says, consider the ants. He says it in Proverbs, consider the ants. And they carry like 10 times their weight. So even though it's proportionate, and we look at an ant and we think, oh, you're a small little guy. And his life, the endurance and the suffering he has to deal with, he's carrying 10 times his weight, like all day, every day. And so we don't want to carry anything, right? And we don't have to. The Lord's made us holy. He says, don't carry the weight of the world. Don't carry this weight. Give it to me. But even if you have something small, maybe it's the little plant too, the little like sprouting plant, like it's like just the beginning of a problem and you're like, this seems so little, but it's driving me crazy. Just give it to him. Because that's the thing is sometimes small things drive us crazy, and to the Lord, he's like, whatever it is that's driving you crazy, I don't want you to be driven crazy. Crazy is not a good place to go. So whether it's big things are driving you crazy or little things are driving you crazy, I want to heal your mind, right? No mental health issues here. I want to be with you. And then again, when it talked about how the Lord worked through them. And so just thinking about that, how can you allow the Lord to work through you? I've already talked about it. It's literally yielding, yield, 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 yield. How do you get out of the way? How do you make room for him? How do you stay yielded and let him work through you? You stop trying to take the wheel. You watch what happens. You follow where he leads. You go at his pace, right? Allow him to work through you. Be the hands and feet. Stay operative. Quit trying to find your own way to do it, because a broken off branch cannot bear fruit. So you will just get frustrated and you will fail. So it's like, accept that you need the root system. You need the power source. Get back to him. Let his power flow through you. His resurrection power, new life flow through you and bear fruit. And understand that bearing fruit will happen through you. But what does bearing mean? It's going to break you. You're going to endure. You're going to suffer. You're going to bear. And that is a gift. That's how you get fruit. The tree is pushing everything inside of it out to get to the fruit. The fruit is like the final piece, but it's taking all those nutrients in and it's growing and stretching and producing fruit. So we're in the stretching. And rather than us being resentful about being in the stretching, it's like, what a gift. Because we can't bear all the glory. But the fact we even get to participate in it at all, even just a little bit of stretching is glory. And we're like, this is so heavy. And he's like, I know. That's why I don't let you carry all the glory, because it will crush you. But you can stretch. We can stretch a little bit at a time. So how can the Lord stretch you? How can you get out of your way? Get your hands off the wheel. Let him drive. Let him show you where you're going, and just follow him. And it's one thing to try to follow him mentally and be like, I have to choose, follow him, versus actually genuinely wanting to. And you just wake up and you're like, where are we going? What's the adventure today? I want to see what you want to show me. Surprise me. Take me places I wouldn't take myself. Show me secret passageways. Show me hidden waterfalls. Show me, beautiful things that I wouldn't even search for, right? I let you lead. And then, like I said, and then there's just freedom. You don't have to figure it all out. You follow him. So let's see if there's any other questions. I think that's it. I'm trying to see if there's any others from what I talked about. Resurrection, right? Hope, appearance, how Jesus appears, and he appears to us in so many different ways. Make room. Be flexible for how the Lord appears to you. That you have the ability to be face-to-face with him, right? Pros, that you can pray. Proshukamai, face-to-face. You draw near to him. He is with you. He is not far off from you, ever. You just are choosing to not acknowledge him. You're creating distance in your mind. You're closing the door. You're tuning him out. But if you just listen, if you just invite him in, there's so much. It's a treasure hunt. There's so much to discover. That there's a way out. And maybe you're in something right now. And the only way out is through. Through, right? If that's you, if that's your word, through. The only way out is through. Go forward, go through it, get to the other side. The joy is on the other side. There is another side. That is the hope that Jesus has given us. There is another side. Going through it doesn't mean that that's the end. That's what was the fear before. And that's why death would be completely pointless if that was the end of the story. Is none of us would ever want to face our problems because we would know that going into the problem just meant that that was the end of it, right? But the throughness, the fact he made a way, he went through death and showed that then it's like, okay, face every fear. There is a throughness. There is another side, and you have to get to the other side, and you've got to go through to get to the other side. How does that help you even understand death, right? Understand all of this. Every progress, right? The process that you're in, the growth, the maturity, the only way you're going to get where you want to be is to go through the things you need to go through. Okay. I love you guys. I love you so much. I saw that this did stream on both TikTok and YouTube, but I can't see. So I'm not liking that. Like I can't see comments, and I love to see y'all's comments. Like I'll go back in and like respond to them and message you guys, but I want to be able to see what you're doing, because it's like if something's making sense and you're hearting it and agreeing with it, or you have questions, like just whatever, when you're support, like when we're on a roll together, I love that part. And so I've got to figure out what to do with that. But otherwise, y'all, we finished Mark. So we've got Luke tomorrow, Luke chapter 1. We're getting through the Gospels, and I just hope that you all have an amazing day. I hope that this blessed you, and that those questions helped you chew on some stuff, and just that life is such a gift.